Hello, I'm Skari, and this is the tactical video series on the different missions of the Leviathan Tournament Mission Companion.
The Dark King.
If you've been playing Warhammer 40,000 for any amount of time, you know that the missions are a huge part of how we play the game. And today we're looking at Mission C, the Ritual, Scrambler Fields, and Sweeping Engagement. And here you have it, the layout for the Ritual and Sweeping Engagement. So of course, Sweeping Engagement being this deployment that goes from this corner over here all the way, or that half of the table, all the way to the corner. It's a very long sweeping deployment across the entire table. There's one objective in the middle of the board, one in each deployment zone. So how do you score primary in this one? You do not score any points for holding your objective in your deployment zone. Of course, if you get something like capture enemy outpost and you're playing tactical, right, then it does count as points. If you get a card like extend battle lines, then having it is very important as well. So it is not irrelevant, but it is important. Now, another reason to explain is you only score primary. It's 5 points for each objective you control in no man's land, up to a maximum of 15. And in this mission, you have to essentially do an action, right, with a unit that can shoot in order to summon more objectives on the battlefield. Now, every turn you can summon an objective, right? You and your opponent can. And at the end of the game, if you each did it, there could be 11 objectives in no man's land, right? So that's something important to remember. So how do you summon an objective? Well, you have to have a unit to do an action. So they have to be eligible to shoot, basically. And you place an objective 9 inches away from an objective that's already placed, right? More than 6 inches away from any other objective. So you could, if there was an objective over here, for example, can't be 6 inches away. As an example, there wouldn't be one there right now. But 9 inches away and exactly 9, right, from edge to edge. And it has to be placed within no man's land and within 1 inch of the unit that in action. So I would need a unit here to create that objective. Now, something that people forget is that you can measure that 9 inches from any of the objectives. So it doesn't have to be the middle one. It can indeed be your home objective, which with this deployment zone means that you have some pretty cool options for putting it relatively close onto your deployment line. And that's something that I like to do early on, especially when there's terrain. Usually there's like nice buildings you can hide behind. You can actually do something similar to that. Another thing you could do is put it, pretty much like straight forward from your objective there, like if you really wanted to. And then you could use this objective to then put others. So depending on how your opponent is attacking you, either they're coming straight on or they might have sent like a big unit that way or they might have sent a big unit this way. If they're sending a big unit this way, then you can sort of like, next time you build an objective, then use this objective as a 9 and then essentially create like objectives further and further up the board and try and make sure that they are like, as you go within 9 inches of each other, 9 inches, 9 inches, and sort of create like a line of objectives. Now, if they decide to start going that way, then you can always use this one over here and start creating sort of like a line this way. Now, it works very well with Drukhari because we have lots of little units. But essentially, you could potentially end up with a decent amount of objectives all over the place. Now, if your opponent goes ahead and, says builds an objective over here, for example, you could use this objective to build an objective like over here, depending on if they've started to push heavy out that way and you want to like, create a little bubble over here because there's a building or something you want to hide behind. All in all, it gives you a lot of leeway as to how to sort of like pocket your objectives in order to make sure that you can hold them and then your opponent has a hard time taking them away from you. Another option that I've seen is just don't make any objectives and take all the ones your opponent makes. So if you're playing a very aggressive list, you can do that as well. But I would recommend maybe you build at least 2 so you can get like secure no man's land, or you can cleanse, or you can do stuff like that if you absolutely need to. At least these 2. I think they're the most important ones, that way or that way, depending on which way you want to do it. And then depending on that, if you can sticky them and move on, like I usually make them with a Cabalite squad and then move on to the next one once it's sticky, make it with a Cabalite squad, make it with a Cabalite squad. Then my reserves come in over here and make a one over here. Or this one gets made with reserves. So I bring in like a Cabalite squad from reserve and then make that one. Or I do it this way, right? So then they have a variety of things. Eventually, you just have so many objectives you can try and hold your primary, and then you try and deny your opponent's ability to score. Even if there's a million objectives, you know, it's completely okay. And I think the more you make in this mission, the better. Of course, that's with a bias of an MSU Drukhari list, but let me know what you think down below and how you approach this mission as well. Another thing that's important to remember is with the new commentary, you can create an objective and then sort of like score on the objective. Things like cleanse, secure no man's land, all that stuff, you can score at the end of the turn. So after you make the objectives, which is different to what it used to be. So you could have, you know, one unit go from here to here and start cleansing and say this objective is already here. And then have a second unit create this objective with an action. So you need a second unit do it. And then that unit would cleanse both of these objectives there, which does open up a lot of defensive plays, being like, I'm just going to cleanse and like deploy teleport homers. And you don't really need to leave this little area. You just send something up to deploy teleport homers and then sit something here to just cleanse and do that, you know, basically in the safety of your deployment zone while your opponent has to make it all the way up. Now, of course, in this mission, in this deployment zone, you know, it's only 22 inches or something in between deployment lines, which means that like if somebody can advance and charge or move really quickly, you can get first turn charge. So you do need to be careful when you deploy. But other than that, it's not a terrible idea when you're playing the ritual. So let me know what you think. Leave a comment down below, and I hope you've been enjoying the videos in this series. Check out all of the videos in the series, and of course, leave me a comment if you so wish. And there you have it. That's today's mission. So if you have any comments or questions, let me know down below. And of course, the Dark Kid. Bye, everybody.